Hi, my name is Maurice Schill, and this is JuJu's Closing the Gap show. My goal with this show is to help you take your company culture from where it currently is to where you want it to be, by introducing you to business leaders, experts, and innovators who've used appreciation throughout their lives to help them achieve their goals. My guest today is Simon Hammond. He's the author of multiple books on branding, including CEO of Earth, Guts, and B Brands, and is also the founder of multiple agencies, two which are still operating here in Melbourne, Hammond Thinking and BeCounsel. Over the last 30 years, he's helped hundreds, if not thousands, of companies and brands become more relevant to their customers. And in today's session, we discuss how things like awareness, respect, and listening can help you achieve a better company culture, lead your teams more effectively, create brands that are more relevant, and of course, have a lot of fun doing it. Now, I enjoyed this conversation thoroughly, and I hope you do as well. So without further ado, I bring you Simon Hammond. Simon, thank you for joining us on Closing the Gap.
Pleasure, Maurice. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, so look, we've got a couple of questions that are much more relevant to your background, to branding, and we'll get to those. But first, I want to sort of set the tone. When I say appreciation, what does that mean to you? What do you think about when you hear that word?
I think it's about being recognised for something you've done. I think we all want to feel like we're worthwhile, and I think we all want to feel like what we do matters. And I think when someone appreciates that, it's a recognition, and I think it's at the heart of everything, because it's a recognition that you exist, so someone's noticed you, but more than that, it's a recognition that what you did actually was a little bit more than just, the average. And I think appreciation and recognition are key for people's motivation and their mental well-being as well.
Who's the last person that you appreciated?
That's a very good question, because you've got to really think about whether you do enough of it yourself, don't you? But I do think probably, at home, I think it starts there, where it's very easy to appreciate the people that you love and that are sharing a life with you. So I think I do a fair bit of that, especially with my kids. I probably, show them a fair degree of appreciation for how they've turned out. Maybe they listen more than I thought. So there's levels of appreciation, isn't there? There's kind of, there's a day-to-day appreciation of just positivity and giving people encouragement and appreciating the fact that they are, achieving or setting out to do what they want to do. And then there's those little special moments of appreciation where you stop and say thanks. I think to my wife, I've done that probably more recently, and you kind of think, I think when someone does something and you kind of go, that was really cool, I went out of her way to do it. So probably that's the last one. In here in the office, I think that we're in a period in the office where my job is to see the value in people and to see the good side of what the potential in people is. So I think that there's been more appreciation in the office probably in recent times than other times. When you're in a building phase or in a restructure phase, I think it's a lot more delicate than if you're in just a status quo. So, yeah, I think appreciation in here has been good recently. I think we're just trying to point out what people are good at and why they're, we really need them here.
Yeah, I think it's a big part. I've spoken to a few people now, and it always comes up that there's appreciation at home, but there's also appreciation at work, and both are sometimes a bit different, of course, but still important. Now, I'd like to get into a bit of a fun question around appreciation. Imagine you had the power to make anyone a master at appreciation, right? Make them just sort of this sort of person who appreciates everyone and everything. Who would that be? And can you share an example that's perhaps someone everyone would know, so a politician or a celebrity or a movie actor, or someone who's, everyone knows?
Well, I think probably the ultimate appreciation would have to be more those religious type leaders who, like a Dalai Lama, who I've obviously never met, unfortunately. But you get the impression that he would go through life and always talking about his appreciation of those around him, or pointing out to those people their worth and so on. So those very outward people that are always about trying to develop and I guess kind of see the goodness in others. So I think to me the epitome of appreciation would be someone like that. And from everything I've read about the Dalai Lama as an example, is that he is the epitome of externalising to other people what their value is and why they're valuable and why they're special and why they should be on earth. I reckon there's not a lot of great exponents of appreciation. I think that's one of the issues, is that, which is what you're coming in on. I think people are very self-centred, and as such, they're worried about how they come across, and they're worried about what they're achieving. And I don't always think that. I think in this world now, especially, there's less appreciation than say when I was growing up. So it's hard. I think you go to the political leaders, none. Education, not really. And I think that the business world is a tough world, but I think there are some people in there that are better at it, but you don't really see that. So I think that's a really good question. I don't think there's a lot of what I would say the epitome of people who appreciate others that I would sort of publicly point at. But obviously a Dalai Lama is one.
Yeah, it's something you said. It's sort of they dedicate their lives to it, and perhaps that is one of the things is, on face value, it might seem quite easy, or you're just saying thank you, recognizing, but really cultivating that attitude of constantly expressing that and sort of expressing that in everything you do is perhaps a lot more difficult and requires a life of practice and dedication.
Well, it does, yeah. And also the world is constantly coming at you to try and achieve your own goals. So it's a very selfish sort of oriented world, where we are taught to look after ourselves, and we are taught to express ourselves, and we're taught to work out our own dreams and our own purpose. It's very self-centered. So I think the art of appreciation is not being taught at all, and the art of acknowledging and appreciating other people and thanking them is probably low. I think in general day-to-day stuff, I think people are quite good at saying thanks, but I'm not so sure that's appreciation. I think that's just. It's almost like, how are you? And you don't really wait for the answer. It's like, thanks, that's whatever. But to genuinely stop and appreciate someone for what they're doing is probably being pushed aside in place of this obsession of self-interest.
Yeah, I think it's changing a little bit, but definitely still, it wasn't something I learned in school. It was never a subject, even in more philosophical or theoretical classes, it wasn't discussed, and it's more one of those things you sort of go out and you either decide to learn for yourself or practice for yourself or follow. But I agree with you. It's not sort of brought into as the part of normal conditioning or cultural background and context.
But also people aren't very good at receiving appreciation either sometimes. So I received a really beautiful letter from someone the other day, a client, saying, what difference I'd made and all these wonderful things. And I was very awkward with it, very embarrassed by it, and kind of go, yeah, whatever, push it away. You don't know what to do with it, because either you don't feel it's deserved, or you don't know how to handle that, So you kind of you have this tough exterior where you have to actually be constantly allowing for failure and disappointment, because that's what you have to brace for. And then as soon as a success comes or appreciation comes, you I don't know how to deal with that. So yeah, I mean that's the other side of it, is that people aren't very good at receiving it, as well as people aren't very good at giving it.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that over the last year. I've been much more aware and conscious of appreciation and noticing when people appreciate me or when I should be. And that's one of the things I've noticed. And even if it's something like a compliment, which is a form of appreciation, sometimes it can feel a bit weird. And you're like, do I say thank you? How do I react to this? And I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the expression of it, but the reaction as well. That is something you have to know how to take in or how to deal with.
Whereas if we take the weekend we've just had here in Melbourne, we've just had the AFL Grand Final, where you can get 100,000 people in the stadium and then hundreds of thousands of people on the streets just going crazy over 20 players. They are really appreciating them in a major way.
Yeah.
But that's almost acceptable because it's not personal. It's like a disassociated appreciation where you kind of go, it's okay to absolutely love Elon Musk or appreciate what he does, or Steve Jobs when he was alive, or the Richmond Football Club. Yeah. But when I work next to someone, I'm not so sure I want to get that personal.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose Richmond and and even Elon Musk and Steve Jobs, in some way they are a form of brand. I wanted to get into this a bit later on in our discussion, but we're on the subject already, so I might as well ask you, do you think that there's, to rephrase the context, I, for example, have a few brands I would say I'm an evangelist for. Right? There's a pair of board shorts I absolutely love, I love the brand, and it's not just a tool I use to help me or has utility. There's an emotional connection to it, and I almost appreciate it. And bringing up these, for example, Elon Musk, there's an appreciation for what he does and who he is, but I don't understand how that can happen without that connection. And I want to know if you think that's in some way role branding plays in that, whether it's a personal brand or whether it's a Richmond Football Club and the idea that goes around that.
I think at the heart of appreciation is probably being able to understand someone else. So to be able to listen and to be able to be present for someone rather than just go, how are you, and then not care what the answer is. Or, what did you do on the weekend? And kind of, it's just one of those things where I'm not really that into what your answer is. I'm just kind of, we're doing the niceties. And I think great brands are good at not just doing the niceties. They're good at really listening and understanding the emotional state of the people that they seek to exist for and serve. So to me, that is a form of an appreciation. So a great brand appreciates the customers and the consumers that it's seeking to exist for by understanding them deeply. And so that's a form, and that's why it's a form of appreciation, and that's why you and I are evangelists for some brands, is because we feel like they get us and they connect with us at a very deep level. They almost, what they do is they help us be a brand. So you wear what you wear, you have the phone you have the car you have, you live in the suburb you live in, because it says something about you. And so the great brands appreciate kind of what it is about you that they must give. And so, I think brands are the ultimate sort of appreciation sort of methods for us. But they're still disassociated. It's appreciation from afar, and I think we're talking about two different types of appreciation. One is understanding someone and almost paying them the due respect that they should have, which is, I've sought to know you, sought to understand you, and now I'm going to give this to you. So this is for you, because I know you. I think that's showing appreciation of a human being. But then there's this day-to-day appreciation. I think that really, when it comes to JuJu, that would be probably the sweet spot is, how do you have a brand that enables people in a micro way to appreciate each other? Because that's the heart of it. I reckon there's similarities, but the really micro appreciation, I think people go out on a limb when they do that. I think they kind of go, well, I'm going to tell you something that I think is really good about you. And it's quite personal. So one is from afar that sort of says, I'm creating a brand or a business that can show that we appreciate you as a human. And the other is, I'm going to actually reach out and touch you personally, like we're 3 feet away, and I'm going to tell you something, and there's going to be a moment. And in this world, where we're taught, political correction and don't invade my personal space, the latter is actually taking a risk. So similarities, but different.
Yeah, so it's almost, there's no risk to appreciating a brand in a way, because it's almost acceptable. Perhaps one of the reasons appreciation is so difficult, coming back to one of our earlier conversations, is that a big part of it is listening. Is really being aware and paying attention as to why is this brand or why is this person so meaningful. And if you're a brand, you're also listening to figure out what is our customer, what are the people we want to interact with.
That's the commonality to the two things. It's listening. And underneath listening is respect. So I think if appreciation has a driver, it's respect. And in a personal level, one-to-one, to know someone and to really look at them and kind of go, gee, that was good, or what you do is really important to me, that requires a lot of respect, and it requires you to listen to, to be in the moment I think and I think one of the problems we've got in society is that we're not in the moment enough. Where if you're on the train, no one is interacting with each other. If there are so many cases now where you see people are just in their own moment, in their own world created by this connectivity that we've never had before. And I can stay in that world, and I don't have to connect to someone else. I don't have to respect them. I don't have to know them. And as such, obviously, I never appreciate them. And I think that's the barrier. It's between this world of connectivity and the human world of, are we actually in this moment or are we not?
Yeah, that's... never thought about the split or those two different worlds. And almost we feel really connected through these things.
Yeah, but are we?
Are we, exactly. And perhaps there's not the same level of intimacy and vulnerability and risk. And
there's none, is there? I mean,
yeah,
for me to, in the former days when we were able to like something, for me to like something, that's not appreciation. That's just playing the game that we've now got, which says I'm still in the game and hopefully someone will notice me. It's completely skewed to the wrong way. There's no intimacy in that. There's no personal connection. And I think genuine appreciation, I think the opportunity for genuine appreciation is to try and push back on that and to sort of say, what does it take to genuinely appreciate someone? Well, it doesn't take pinging them off a text. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be stopping them where they are and going, can I just have a word? I just thought that was incredible what you did. Now that, one-to-one, face-to-face, eye-to-eye, nothing comes close to that. Never has, never will. A text is nice, but nothing like pulling someone apart, pulling someone to the side and saying, that was amazing.
Do you think, there's a big discussion around the fact that people troll or write really negative comments. Do you think because there's that lack of intimacy and risk and respect, that also allows people, or gives people permission to say things that you would never say to person face to face?
Absolutely.
And it's sort of the same side of the coin.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, humans are capable of greatness and darkness all at the same time, and love and hate is the same thing, just two sides of the same coin, as we know. So, yeah, I think when you give human beings the tools to be both incredibly good and incredibly bad, they'll take both. And sometimes they'll use them. We're quite extreme too. So the tools we've now got allow instant damage and, I guess, instant amazing connectivity that we've never had. But the damage side of it, is not being understood yet. And so we've got an era which is only now 20 years old, really, of this massive connectivity where we don't understand the social ramifications of that. And so appreciation and this whole area you're talking about, which is basically human to human interaction, close bonding and understanding what makes us feel great about ourselves. I just wonder how much of the absolute spate of mental illness or the rise in mental illness is associated with our inability to handle the new social conditions, which is unproven yet. We don't know what it's doing to us socially. So I think to bring back appreciation and to understand what it's like at a very close and personal level, not at a faraway level, is potentially a really big step forward in that direction.
So, I'm painfully aware of the negative consequences of things like Facebook or Instagram and the mental health elements that fall into that. And JuJu is, in a way, a digital, it's almost social media-esque, right? Yeah. So building that out, I'm very conscious of, what are the unforeseen negative consequences of doing that? What happens when now we start, because in a way it's like sending a text message, it's an easy cop-out to just send someone a JuJu. So I constantly think about, how do we not use this as an alternative, but a complementer, right? How do we use this to facilitate smaller interactions, the minute ones, which can then facilitate more intimate and more real expressions of appreciation that happen face to face, or
I think the beauty of JuJu is that it starts us back towards that. I don't think you can go from where we are now to all of a sudden everyone going, well, when you come to work today, grab someone and tell them how much you think they're great. I think that you've got to do it within the game that's now there. And I think that you've got to play within the system. And I think with JuJu, you would be getting people to think about appreciation, and you're getting them to think about others. So it's being less self-absorbed and more open to those that I work with around me. So I think to do that in a sort of a social, new age digital environment is completely appropriate, because I think it starts that ball rolling. My point is, I don't think that's going to solve the world's problems by keeping it there.
Yeah.
I think what will happen is it'll bring up a new kind of, I don't know, just a new awareness and almost like an acceptance that it's okay to just not always be looking at yourself and kind of watch out for other people. That's the beauty of it, especially in an office situation where it's hard. You're always striving to meet budgets or do stuff. To appreciate people digitally first or in a social first, and then get that awareness of others is a really cool thing.
That's, I suppose, part of the big goals, just awareness, getting people to think a bit more about, as we put it, the we and not the me. And so I was just curious as to sort of your thoughts on that, because it's something I spend a lot of time thinking about. Now, you've clearly thought about appreciation in this context a lot. I'd like to know, when was the first time in your life that you realized, hey, this is something really powerful, this is something really important to myself and to the people around me?
Yeah, as I said before, I find appreciation difficult because, over, 31 or so years of running my own business, you have to harden yourself to criticism more than anything else. If you can't do that, you can't survive. So you brace yourself for a sort of a natural state that says you're going to get knocked about. And as such, you almost, you've got your shoulder into the grindstone and you're leaning into this. And when you're in a very heavy wind and you're leaning into it just to sort of stay upright, when the wind stops, you almost fall over. And so when someone all of a sudden stops and appreciates you, you kind of go, oh, geez, I wasn't expecting that. I was just expecting to get whacked for the next week. So it is, it is important. It's just that society and business is bred to survive in adversity. And so it's really hard to reframe and retrain yourself to kind of go, appreciation is really important. Because if you think it's too important, then of course you're going to fail, because you're going to get disappointed, because no one's ever going to say great job. In my job especially, as most business leaders will tell you, it's a very lonely place to be a business leader, because you don't want to share with your staff your fears and your issues. And equally, they probably feel a bit intimidated saying, well done, we're behind you. They almost think, well, you've got this. It's a very complicated one, appreciation for business leaders. And I think it's very rare, because everyone thinks that, they don't need it. They're so self-driven that you don't need to say, great. I never, apart from clients, I never get told by anyone I work with, or my family, that, gee, you're doing a great, well, not never, rarely, because it's just maybe expected. So I think it's important, but I'm trying to answer your question from the point of view of, has it been important to me? No, I've made sure it's not. But is it important? Yeah, bloody oath, it's important. But if you allow yourself to be softened by the notion of, I need appreciation to go forward, then you'll never go forward. And it'll be the same, it's the same with you. Doing the startup, if you're waiting for someone to applaud you as you come in the room, you're just going to give up. You're just not going to get it. So I don't know if that's bad or good or indifferent, it's just the way it is. So I think that the idea of JuJu is really important for people within businesses. It'll be nice one day if I don't know, would it be nice if the leader also gets it, or is it just the way it is? The way it is, a leader has to lead. And if a leader is doing it to get appreciated, they're probably not a great leader. Maybe. Yeah,
perhaps it's the wrong goal if it's for that attention or the relevancy. But I've, over the last year, I've really know what you're talking about, and the punches keep coming, and you have to sort of toughen up a little bit.
You do.
What I've personally found, the only way for me to really get through that is to appreciate myself.
Right.
To not ask other people to appreciate
That's
me,
a
but
whole
just
different thing.
to say, hey, you know, it didn't go as well as planned, or this didn't happen, but you did your best. We're just going to keep going. And I don't know yet. It's too early to tell whether or not that's going to change it over time, or if it's just something, and perhaps more gratitude than appreciation for myself. But I found that really powerful.
Yeah, but I think that you're onto that, because I think over all the years I've been doing it, I think if you know yourself and you know what success is to you personally, and you appreciate that in yourself, then you don't get put off by other people, and you keep going, and then the appreciation comes from your own scoreboard, not from someone else's. That's very powerful. When you can have your own scoreboard and it's not set by someone else. So the scoreboard isn't, am I making this much money or that much money, or did someone come and tell me I'm doing a great job? If I know that I set a goal, and there are many levels of goals, and I'm moving towards where I want to move, then self-appreciation is just the most important thing. Because, of course, it's the same with awareness and knowing know thyself is at the heart of everything. If you don't know your own direction, then you're stuffed, basically. So it's the same with appreciation. I think you've got to somehow be happy that you appreciate your own value. But we're talking about the leaders of business, and we're talking about entrepreneurs and startups. If you're talking about the rank and file of people who just get by each day and enjoy doing their job, I think that's a totally different argument. And they need levels of being acknowledged and appreciated and gratitude and all those things, which, back to our early discussion, is going the wrong direction. Now, you may disagree with that, but I don't see much of a change in it. I don't see a massive change or a sweeping change to appreciation. I think it's needed, but I don't see it.
Okay. I want to hear a bit more about, you feel like it's not really been changing over the last couple of years. To sort of share my perspective, I see, in fact, the focused company culture, for example, just the pure discussion around, hey, how do we engage with people better, has become much more popular and much more sort of in the mainstream than it did maybe even 10 or 20 years ago. Now, I also don't know that much because I wasn't in the professional world then. But I do see that conversation happening a lot more. And I think it's also similar with brands, for example, where the importance of brand, it wasn't just anymore for huge companies or corporates that talked about brand and invested in brand, but now everyone is starting to invest in brand and see how important that is. I see a trend where it's sort of moving towards more and more of a focus and becoming more and more important. I want to know what your thoughts on that are.
Well, I think culture's become more important as a buzzword. P&C, which used to be HR, human resources, people and culture. They're buzzwords because CEOs and COOs and boards know that if they don't get their culture right, they're going to lose money. I'm not so sure that the care factor has gone up. I think that the systematic understanding of what it takes to not lose money has focused us on culture. And I'm not so sure that businesses and brands are getting better at it either. I think that my work is centred around the fact that we are going in the wrong direction with brands. The emphasis on brands is still a misunderstanding about what a brand is. A brand is about advertising and logo and marketing and the ability to take money off people. It's not. It's about belief of why something collects people together, and the belief that holds them together, and the belonging that comes from that. That's a genuine brand. And I think genuine brands have genuinely incredible cultures. And if you go back to our discussion on, say, the Richmond Football Club, as an interesting one here in Melbourne at the AFL, it's becoming, and I had a very long session with Damien Hardwick, the coach, a month or two after he won the premiership in 2017. And he was explaining then what is now becoming more popularly discussed now, and that is that he changed the culture of Richmond so that they no longer wanted winning to be the only thing. They wanted brotherhood and friendship and love of each other to be the centre part of Richmond, which is very hard to say in the tough, rough and tumble world of football, where winning is everything. But they, genuinely, if you talk to a Richmond football player, they will talk to you about their bond. And to do that, they've had to give everything of themselves to each other. So they've gone through some incredible, deep, sort of therapeutic development work where they know everything about each other and they've committed to each other and they appreciate each other at a very deep level. That's genuine culture. And they then believe in each other. They believe in a common set of values, and they believe why they matter. I think that's what you should emulate in a business, and it's not being done. I don't think business is going in the right direction. I think our business is set on the fact that it's not. We're trying to fix that.
Yeah.
We're trying to fix the fact that businesses think brand is advertising, but it's not. It's deep. It's deep understanding of yourself and where you fit in society and what your cultural truths are. So I'm not as optimistic as you are about culture being kind of having gone a long way. I've been involved in cultural change for 30 years, and I reckon 30 years ago there was probably a very innate and intuitive and natural care for each other in a business sense. And I think as the share market took over and everyone's got an interest in another company and CEOs are now ripped apart, I think the business has become harder and it's become tougher. And culture is used as a bit of a carrot, but it's also a stick. So come over here and let's form a great culture and let's have some values. Well, the values are shit. I mean, the values are from a values book that everyone uses the same book. They're not real things that people really give their life for. So I think that there are examples in the world, some examples of great businesses that get their culture right, and they're the ones who are doing the most. The Apple example, or the Body Shop example, or the Intel, or some of these businesses where they are just completely inclusive of each other and go, it's us against the world. Here's what we believe in, and we all, it's brotherhood and sisterhood. That's a hard thing to get right. So I don't think most cultures are doing that. They're doing mission statements and visions and values.
It's interesting you said the carrot. So it's now a sort of popular thing because it's a buzzword, and you need to have good culture, and so people talk about how great their culture is, even though it is just a mission statement or values. Why do you think that care factor isn't there? Do you think it has to do with the fact that it's not really measurable like other things, like brand as well? It can be quite hard to measure.
Or I think it's because businesses don't want to get too deep. And I think the thing about culture is about shared belief. And to get a shared belief, you have to have a belief that resonates with people. And it's not just, I believe we're going to get 17.5% more than we did last year. That's not a belief. That's just greed. So a genuine belief holds people together, and I think most businesses don't have the appetite, time, or understanding to do that. Great leaders do. The Steve Jobs of the world and the leaders who have genuinely gone about changing the world and saying, my belief is that this is what's going on. Then people have a choice. They can say, I agree with you, I'm with you, or I disagree with you, keep away from me. But we don't have that. I mean, you name me more than 5 businesses that you could actually, recite their genuine belief in what they're trying to do in the world. And there are exceptions, not the rule. The majority of businesses are just sitting down trying to survive. And they're not building genuine culture around belief and belonging. They're building, they're building culture around, let's not get in trouble. Let's make sure that we don't get health and safety in here. Let's have a culture where no one gets hurt. Let's have efficiency. Let's have respect for each other, even though there's nothing to respect, there's no belief. So, I think we'll look back on this time and realise there was a lot of platitudes given to culture.
That's interesting. Maybe it's also having a skewed perspective from my end, paying attention to the companies and to the brands who do put a lot of emphasis and who do take the time. So perhaps I'm seeing the world through going, hey, well, look at all of these great examples, but that is maybe 1% or less than that of actual businesses out there.
I'll give you an example too, an interesting one where I work for a charity at the moment, well, not-for-profit anyway. And it's a massive global not-for-profit. And their whole reason for being is to, make the world a better place. it is the most brutal culture I've ever been involved in. It's dog eat dog. People are nasty to each other because their self-interest kicks in, and because the change requires them to give up something or to come together on something, you know, they're brutally hanging on and lashing out at those who are coming near them. Mm. This is within an organisation that is absolutely openly declaring it's only for good. Mm. And you've got a brutal culture that is harsh and completely self-absorbed and nasty. And I've seen actions in there that are worse than the actions I saw in working for the big banks.
Yeah, I guess I always see there's brand and culture are actually two sides of the same coin again, to use that term. And I feel like when the culture inside isn't really reflective and aligned to that belief, right? Perhaps in slightly different ways because they're working on it, but that belief that brings everyone together to work there should be the same belief really as well that gets communicated outwards in a way.
Right. Exactly right.
And so if there's not an alignment on both sides, then it can become fake or genuine.
And it needs to be aligned to the personal beliefs of the people too. Mm-hmm. So there's sort of three-way alignment needed. You know, the internal culture, the external communication, and the private lives of the people who are there. So you end up having people who work for a business that have got a personal passion for what that belief is, and that's really hard to break. You know, it's really hard to beat. Back to Richmond, you know, it's really hard to beat an organisation that is based on, you know, brotherhood and friendship and you know, absolute respect and appreciation of each other. That's 18 players that will die for each other versus perhaps the 18 players on the other side who are really hoping to win to get that, you know, that personal accolade of their first premiership. They're different things.
Yeah, that's interesting. What advice would you give to perhaps CEOs or founders who can see that it's important but are really struggling to make that happen? Where would you recommend they start, or what approach? Or do you have any advice, sort of perhaps some easy things they can start implementing?
Well, I think from an appreciation point of view and from their brand point of view, they have to start at the same place. They have to stop and try and align the business that they're trying to do with the people that they are relying on to do it. And the alignment of that is everything. And to find your way there, you need to start by understanding and listening to those people. So you need to work out what it is that's going to motivate those people. Why are they there? Are they there just to get a wage and don't talk to me? In that case, is one of many problems, isn't it? You've either got nothing for those people to align to, you've got the wrong people, you're in the wrong industry, whatever it might be. It's really kind of self-awareness of you know, listening to the people who are working for you and understanding who they are, and either working out they're not the right people or working out that those people need more to work for. I think it starts with awareness. It starts with awareness of who they are and awareness of then what you think you're doing that matters. So where I always start with a CEO is I try and get them to reflect on, you know, a sense of pride, if you like, of saying, well, if you were at a dinner party or a pub with mates and you were describing what you do, you know, do you describe it in a way that says, oh, well, you know, it's just making widgets, but it gets me by, it's putting the kids through school, I'm doing the best I can? Or do you say, this really matters, I'm really passionate about this because of this, and people go, oh yeah, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. They're two different conversations, and the former is just, you know, it's just a recipe for sort of treading water. Mm-hmm. The latter is something that gets you out of bed in the morning, hopefully. It's never easy, but it means that, you know, you start there. Why do you matter? And then find the people that agree with you, and then put the two together. That's my constant advice to CEOs, is don't just survive.
It's just a change in communication, right? You're saying the same thing, what I do, but one reflects passion and reflects a belief in something. Do you recommend that people also not just talk to their friends at a dinner party about that, but also to their employees and always take that approach? Is that something you'd recommend doing as the leader? That's one of your main responsibilities, I suppose.
Is to paint the picture and be transparent about where you think you're going, and give them a chance to either get on board or get off. I think you've got to always be definitive in what you're offering people. What is this journey going to look like? So yeah, I think you've got to continually communicate, and you've got to give them this sort of this beacon of where you're going, and you've got to make that as vivid as you can to sort of say, well, here's where I see we could be. Do you want to come? And if they go, no one's into that, no one even cares for that, you go, okay, well, I've got this all wrong. Or if they go, yeah, but how do we get there? That's a whole different thing. Then you start working towards it and you change things. But if you haven't got that beacon right first, and if you're not asking them and communicating with them, then it's really hard. It doesn't mean you have to be a complete huggy kind of business of always. I think in this business we're trying to do that at the moment. We're trying to change from a business that had no transparency to a business that's got a clear vision of what success and what we are believing in together. It still means they get in on a Monday morning and it's like, every so often you feel like I'd rather be still on Sunday. It's just natural.
Yeah.
You can't fix that always. But you can have a place where you kind of go, I like this, I like what we're trying to do.
Interesting, which is a good segue to really my last question around business before we go to one final thing I get all of my guests, give them the opportunity to do. But being in a creative branding agency, having studied product design and being part of the creative process, a big part of it to me is willing to take risks and do things a little bit differently, and to almost be vulnerable and say, so this is what I've created. And I think that's an important part of it. I wanted to get your thoughts on how do you use appreciation, if at all, to support the creative process in some way, or to encourage people to be more bold, or in your words, to have more guts.
Yeah, I don't think any idea is a bad idea for a start. So if someone comes up with an idea, and the last thing you want to do is go, that's shit. That's not a very good idea. You kind of go, I get what you're thinking about here. That's good thinking in this way. I think you've always got to start with an appreciation of the effort that's made. As a creative, it's very, you're very vulnerable. So any idea, because everyone's creative. Any idea that comes out of someone's head is them taking a risk.
Yeah.
And so you've got to reward that risk with appreciation. That's the first thing you must do. And you must encourage them to come up with more ideas that are going to be supported and appreciated. And I think it all starts there, so that people feel, I've got a thought, I'm just going to give it up. Because you don't know where the great thought's going to come from. It could come from the bookkeeper, who just thinks of something because they were out on the weekend and they heard someone else saying something on Friday and they just had a thought. So you've got to create an environment where people feel safe to create. So that's where it starts.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Working by myself at the moment, I sort of keep myself safe. But then the moment you put it out there to the world, or share an article, or share a video like this, the first moment is one of, what are people going to say? And,
yeah, exactly. Judgment.
The judgment part, and I think the first response always being, hey, this is a good idea, and then discussing that is much more encouraging than immediately shooting it down.
That's right. Yeah, you've got to encourage people to keep going, and then at the same time you've got to give them constructive feedback, but hopefully feedback that allows them to grow, not just wither back into the hole they came from.
Awesome. So before I get to the last part, where can people find more about you? Perhaps buy your books, or even get in touch with you if they might be interested in getting your advice on.
Sure. Well, HammondThinking.com is the place to start, and we'll be launching a new business later in the year, which will be well and truly publicised on HammondThinking.com. Currently, BeCounsel is the other website. It's just BeCounsel.com, and that's that's the agency side of things. But best if they go to HammondThinking.com and see what my philosophies are on business and how I see the sort of stuff we've been discussing as it affects business and leaders. So welcome to have a look.
Awesome. Well, I'll put those in the links on the video so people can do that. This has been really insightful for me. I've got a lot out of it. I enjoyed the conversation. It was very fluid. Thank you once more for joining us and taking the time.
Good luck with the venture. I'm sure it'll be successful.
Thank you. And if people reach out to you through this, hopefully you can share some more insights.
Absolutely.
I highly recommend reading the books. because they do give you a different perspective on
Yeah, they
of
do.
branding and what's really important, and very reflective of the conversation we just had.
Thanks, Maurice.
Awesome.
Nice
Thank you.
one. Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Well done.